To protect my paradise, I must unleash the beast within. The story begins in an FBI interrogation room. Beside me is a wolf, leaving the FBI agents dumbfounded. A few weeks prior, my life seemed idyllic with my wife Becca and our children, Sammy and Brady. But my job was a different world, dark and brutal. I was a government assassin, often leaving at midnight for missions filled with blood, pain, and gunshots. This meant missing countless family dinners, and Becca grew increasingly disillusioned with our relationship. On the rare days I was home, I felt the distance between my family and me acutely. One morning, Becca mentioned our upcoming summer vacation. I promised to plan it after today's mission. Becca, looking dejected, started to say something but stopped herself and left for work. Afterward, I waited in the hotel lobby until my targets entered the elevator. I followed them after hanging the out-of-order sign. With lightning-fast moves, I snatched a gun from one of them and engaged in close combat, taking on the entire group in the cramped cabin. One guy tried to call for help, but I stopped him and turned the phone into a weapon. After a brutal fistfight, I took them all down and retrieved the data chip from the leader's pocket. Suddenly, a gangster tried to fire, but I quickly disarmed him and sent him to meet his maker. Then, I attempted to escape through the kitchen, only to run into a crowd of armed men waiting. They opened fire simultaneously, so I took cover behind furniture and found a gas tank. I threw it at my attackers, and one explosion was enough to clear them out. Next, I headed to the parking garage, where a machete-wielding gang was waiting. I improvised with my belt and a pipe ripped from the wall before diving into the fight. These guys were all talk, and I easily took them down, though not without sustaining injuries. After the mission, I met my handler Barber to hand over the data chip. After confirming the data was fine, Barber informed me my debt had been reduced by $800,000, leaving $30 million. Turns out, I'd wiped out a Russian Mafia boss's fortune and was paying it off. The next mission was ready, but I requested time off. Barber granted my request, but pointed out that this job was in my blood. Afterward, I thought about a sticker on a gang's car, advertising a place called Plummerville, where I'd gone as a child. I showed the family an old commercial, announcing I'd take them there for vacation. Nobody was excited, so I gave a passionate speech about making memories to convince them. On the day of departure, we stopped by the nursing home to pick up my father, David, a former FBI agent. We had a pleasant drive, even singing along the way. Upon arriving at the hotel, the kids were unhappy about sharing a room. David agreed to give up his room for Brady and sleep in the old cabin. Becca was unimpressed with our room but tried to stay positive. Sadly, when my family wanted to go to the water park, we learned it was closed due to an accident. To compensate, they gave us hot dog coupons. We went to a local diner, and I reminisced about my days there with my brother. Lost in thought, I unintentionally stared at Sheriff Abel, who took offense and warned me. Afterward, the family visited the amusement park. I tried to connect with Brady, but he was unwilling to confide and only cared about impressing girls. He won a lot of tickets and gave some to the girls before redeeming the rest for a stuffed animal for his sister. A boy named Max thought Brady was trying to steal his girlfriend and demanded an apology, but Brady refused and insulted him. Max then grabbed Sammy's stuffed animal and destroyed it, prompting Brady to punch him. A brawl ensued and security had to break up the boys. Max threw a ball at Brady, but I caught it. The security guard started yelling, blaming me for having a bad kid, and we began to argue, leading Becca to intervene and declare we were leaving. On our way out, Sammy picked up the pieces of her stuffed animal, and the guard slapped her. I was furious but restrained myself. After a few steps, I said I forgot my phone and went back inside. I kicked down the main door and punched the rude security guard square in the face. Another guard tried to intervene, so I threw him into a claw machine. A customer insulted me and tried to attack me with a hammer from a game, but the cord was too short. I used the claw to take him down, then shoved him into a whack-a-mole game and beat him senseless with the hammer. The rude guard approached again, so I threw him onto a pinball machine and slapped him around just as he had done to Sammy. I didn't stop until Becca called my name. Brady and I were arrested, and Becca argued with the officers, trying to claim self-defense. I scolded Brady for using violence to protect his sister, and he pointed out my hypocrisy. Brady thought my fight was cool, but I denied it, saying I wanted my son to be better than me. Our conversation was interrupted as I was taken to the sheriff's office and met Wyatt, who ran the town and was Max's father. Normally, tourists get a pass, but Wyatt was furious about Max's injuries. I explained what the guard did to my daughter and asked what he would have done, so Wyatt agreed to let us go. However, Abel was still upset and secretly ordered his men to take care of us. The ride back to the hotel was silent and awkward. Upon returning to our room, Becca berated me for my actions, pointing out that Brady was becoming too aggressive because of me. She noticed I was carrying a bag and thought I was hiding my gear. But when she opened it, she found a bottle of wine from the place and year we first met. She cried and hugged me, apologizing. While enjoying the wine, Becca admitted she knew I was dangerous from the start because I was covered in blood. The next day, David continued to relax in the old cabin while my family enjoyed the amusement park. I noticed a police officer taking our picture but said nothing to avoid ruining the mood. Later, we went to the pier and I saw a cop approaching with some thugs. I pushed my family onto a boat but didn't join them, citing a stomachache. Then, I got onto an empty boat and the men followed. However, some tourists also boarded. As the boat departed, the thugs in the back said they wanted me gone. I tried to reason with them, but one lunged, and I defended myself, starting a fight. The tourists in the front had headphones on and didn't realize what was happening. One smashed my face into a metal bar, so I grabbed a life vest to fight back, using it as a shield when an enemy tried to stab me. I broke his knife handle and threw another overboard, but he clung to the edge. An opponent tried to hit me with a pole, but I dodged, and the cop took the hit. Then, I tied him up with a life preserver and repeatedly punched him. As the other guy tried to climb aboard, I hit him with the pole before tossing it into the water. Another man tried to choke me, so I smashed a bottle over his head. The cop pursued, and I tried to calm him down, only for him to cut off my pinky finger. It fell into the water and was immediately swallowed by a fish. While I was distracted, a guy punched me, causing me to fall into the water as well. The thugs then yelled at the cop, saying they were hired to scare a simple tourist, but I was clearly trained. At that moment, I climbed back onto the boat, too angry to hold back. First, I grabbed the cop and bashed his head against the ceiling. Next, I broke a duck statue and used its head as a weapon. An enemy tried to stab me, but I broke his arm. Upon finding the anchor, I jammed it into one guy's back and activated the anchor system to throw him overboard. Finally, I repeatedly punched the cop in the face while yelling that I was on vacation. Afterward, I called my foster brother, Harry, and said Plummerville wasn't as friendly as I remembered. Harry explained it was an old trade route and our father took us there years ago because he was on a mission, not vacation. All the cops there were corrupt and worked for organized crime. Next, I called Barber, who confirmed Plummerville was a backdoor for all sorts of illegal transactions. The crime lord there was a woman named Lendina. She was extremely dangerous, so Barber advised me to de-escalate. Meanwhile, Wyatt and Abel were preparing illegal goods for shipment. One of the boxes flickered, as Wyatt planned to get Lendina in trouble. After Wyatt left, Abel received a call from his men, saying I wasn't a typical tourist. At a casino, Lendina was pretending to play cards with a customer, then suddenly stabbed his hand. Afterward, she slit the dealer's throat and stabbed the customer's eye before checking his ear. It turned out the guy had an earpiece to cheat, which is why Lendina was so enraged. The customer's accomplices tried to flee, but Lendina's female assassins quickly took them down. Lendina then ordered her guards to leave no witnesses and burn everything, so they shot and killed everyone in the room. Afterward, Lendina called Wyatt, who reminded her that today's shipment would be the last, as his father's debt would finally be paid. However, Lendina told him his debt would never end and that his father died because he lost focus. She then called Abel and told him to remind Wyatt who he worked for. At the park, Sammy was excited to see some wildlife, including a cute wolf. However, the caretaker was rude, so my family moved on. They wanted to reunite with me but couldn't find me, so they returned to the hotel. They were worried when someone started banging aggressively on the door, but it was only David who brought dinner and said I was late. Meanwhile, Abel kidnapped Max and was discussing plans with his men to send him to Lendina. They were interrupted by me, pouring gasoline on a pile of money. I pulled out a lighter and pointed at the drums behind me, saying I could blow up the whole room and that Lendina would be furious about her missing shipment. However, I wouldn't do it if Abel promised not to bother my family anymore. Abel was enraged but didn't want to risk it and agreed to the deal. As I prepared to leave, Max rolled out of a truck, seemingly asking for help. I remained silent and left the building for my car. I drove only 2 blocks before turning back. A fierce battle immediately ensued and some men fled. I stole a gun and fought the group with both firearms in my bare hands. A man was thrown through a truck window, startling Max. A thug grabbed me and tried to push me into a chainsaw, but I shoved his head into it first. Afterward, I freed Max and we tried to leave. Abel fired a shot but missed his only target. I shot at a lamp just to keep him occupied, but sparks fell onto the money and gasoline, igniting instantly. Max and I ran out of the building as the flames spread rapidly, igniting the drums and causing a massive explosion. Soon after, Lendina learned about the incident and saw my face on security cameras. Her team tracked and found my family at the hotel. Abel called her to try and warn her, but Lendina just thought he was an exaggerating fool. Later at the motel, I reunited with my family. Brady was tense, seeing Max, but the boys shook hands. Becca cried as she realized I would be going on another mission, as I had promised not to work during their vacation. I explained it was unintentional, and admitted I couldn't control my job, so Becca should go with the kids. However, she refused and told me to handle it. Afterward, I went to see Wyatt, who immediately attacked me. I dodged every blow while trying to explain I saved Max, but Wyatt wasn't listening and cornered me against a fence. I fought back to finally calm him down and explain everything. Wyatt then bought me a drink to thank me and said Lendina killed his father. He inherited the debt and criminal business but didn't want it, and most importantly, he didn't want Max involved. Lendina was gathering an army for revenge, so we needed a plan. Wyatt gave me all the weapons he had and agreed to shut down the water park to use it as a battlefield. Harry and David soon arrived to help us set traps throughout the park, and I released the wolf from its cage. When we were done, I shared my concern about Brady becoming like me, as Harry and I were clearly influenced by our father's work. However, David said we were better men than he was. At the motel, Becca noticed David had left a dart gun and told the kids she was going for a walk. In the evening, Lendina and her crew arrived at the park. They waited outside while Abel approached me and Wyatt, hoping to persuade us to surrender. However, we wanted to fight. Abel signaled his failure and tried to get back in his car, but Lendina ordered her men to shoot him down. Wyatt and I ran for cover as her army swarmed the park. Wyatt used a hammer from a game to trigger the first trap, causing a series of hidden landmines to detonate beneath the soldiers' feet. I pretended to get on a ride and lured pursuers by having them follow a doll. Then, I activated the machine, and the moving cabin immediately took out the attackers. Next, I triggered several hidden bombs in the carnival booths as a distraction before bursting out with my gun, killing a few more. When I ran out of ammo, I hid in the House of Mirrors. The soldiers chased me inside and fired repeatedly, but they only broke the mirrors due to my reflection. Suddenly, a mirror opened to reveal a bomb, which soon detonated, taking them all out. As I tried to reach the next trap, an opponent hid behind a booth to ambush me. However, the wolf saw him and barked, so I attacked first and killed the guy. Meanwhile, Wyatt crossed a ball pit, and when his enemies tried to follow, they stepped on landmines and were instantly killed. Wyatt then ran to the next location, and a thug shot him in the leg. He took cover behind a wall, and as the soldiers tried to pursue, they triggered a trap that released razor-sharp surfboards that killed them. I reached the top of another ride while shooting down more enemies. Then, I escaped by sliding down a water chute. A man immediately pursued, so I jumped out before the end and dropped some spikes to kill him. The army reached the back half of the park, and David opened fire with a machine gun for cover. I also continued to shoot, and my arm was injured in the chaos. At the motel, a second team prepared to kill my family. However, Harry crept in the shadows, killing them one by one with his sword. Finally, he swiftly took down a few men. Only the team leader remained, so Harry engaged him in a fierce sword fight. At first they seemed evenly matched, but Harry soon overpowered him and broke his sword. The man pulled out a gun, so Harry chopped it in half before cleaving his head in two. A thug managed to get into the cabin and was about to shoot Max and Sammy, but Brady jumped on his back. After a struggle, Brady managed to get the man in a chokehold and took him down. As Harry entered, he said I'd be proud. Back at the park, I found Lendina, who had sent her female assassins after me. A fierce battle immediately began, and the pair overpowered me to capture me. They held me while Lendina continuously slashed my face with a knife. After insulting me for a few minutes, she ordered her guards to kill me. Suddenly, Wyatt appeared nearby and shot both women in the head, so Lendina threw a knife into his chest. Lendina then sat on top of me and pulled out another knife, ready to kill me. Just then, a dart hit her shoulder, knocking her backward. It turned out Becca had come to help, so Lendina threw a knife at her. Becca shot another dart, blocking the knife and hitting Lendina in the eye. The remaining criminals then surrounded them, and David yelled a warning, so Wyatt and the couple jumped into the pool before all the explosives in the park detonated at once. As fireworks lit up the sky, the couple kissed underwater. Currently, the FBI is still trying to interrogate me, Becca, and the wolf. Just then, the agents received a call and were forced to let the couple go. Later at home, the family enjoyed photos from their vacation. My story ends here. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching till the end, and see you next time.